students and well, maybe even faculty. And so what I'll be talking to, today is I'd like every student to think what lies ahead. So I'll be talking about what waits for you, what waits ahead, and as you can judge from the title, I'll be talking about your career path, and I'm using a little bit provocative words by saying right. I'm not claiming that I will tell you what to do, what is right, what is wrong, but I'll just try to share my experience, and you decide what's best for you, right? So this is my warning that some things that I will say will be debatable, maybe opinionated, but the only thing I want to achieve today is to stimulate students to think, to learn from experience of a single person, but never stop there. Try to to find people like me. Try to ask around and build a library of case studies, so that when time comes, and time will come even sooner than you think, you will have some experience that will help you make a decision where to go, whether to go stay in academia, whether to go in industry, or it's up to you to decide what to do. So again, I'm not claiming that I know what's the right turn. I would say that I did the right turn based on my own experience. And I would say that I joined the industry. I survived the first couple of years because it was tough. And I can even claim that I'm thriving as of now, because it's 4 p.m. And I'm doing what I like. I'm talking to other people, and I'm still being paid for that. I work for Nokia, but I've been working less than a year. I will explain a little bit more, give more context on that in the later slides. But all the opinions, everything that I will say that expresses some judgment, was solely mine. They are not necessarily an official Nokia position. And I'm not a hiring scout for Nokia, but I will talk briefly about the job opportunities and even co-op opportunities that Nokia has. But my main goal for this talk would be, again, so that in the end, all students are more informed, have better clearer picture of what is what lies on, so to say, on the other side of the wall that sometimes separates industry and academia. So when time comes, you'll be able to make a proper decision that's well informed, carefully weighted, and that works for you. I'm not claiming that you should go to industry. I'm not even claiming that you should stay in academia. I'm just giving you some context, and hopefully it will be helpful to you. So I expect many students and attended some conferences, maybe even talks, and this is not the first the first presentation you listen to. And I also had my share of presentations and conferences that I attended. And my own experience is that I mostly left frustrated for the same reasons as Irish mathematician and theoretical physicist John Sinch was. And at some point you realize that you are not alone in this. It's a common situation. And as John Sinch mentions, he said that at some point he realized that he wasn't alone. Even such high physicists as Schrödinger, they they go through this when they attend a talk that is very scientific. It's really hard to convey and to communicate effectively when we talk about complicated matters. So I wanted to design this talk in a complete opposite manner so that we avoid this result altogether. So it will be a very lighthearted in a sense and simple talk, where I will avoid talking about science, or at least serious science, and I will just cover three topics. The first, I will, since I work for Nokia, I kind of represent Nokia now, so I will talk about what Nokia is to correct some misunderstandings that most people have about Nokia as a company. Then I will talk about what Nokia, how photonics is being used in Nokia and what photonics is. Again, photonics is very large field. It will be hard for me to convey its all aspects of it. So I will just give a specific case. But the main my main focus would be, and the main goal is to actually share my path and experience, and you, I hope, will incorporate it somehow in your own decision-making process when the time comes. All right, so let's move on to the actual NOKIA. So NOKIA, I've been working for NOKIA since April last year. So it's less than a year, but I've been in industry for more than 5 years. And I will explain how my previous experiences too. But for now, let's focus on NOKIA. Many people, when you ask what NOKIA is, and older generation will immediately recall the really good and reliable cell phones, right? But NOKIA is much more than cell phones, especially today. First of all, NOKIA is a huge corporation that focuses on telecom networks and technologies. Well, that includes 5G, that includes all sorts of equipment for data centers and many other things. It's a huge corporation. And not many people know is that Bell Labs, for example, the famous Bell Labs, now are being part of NOKIA. They over the course of their history, Bell Labs have been owned by different companies, but NOKIA is the current owner. So there is some research and development there as well. This is not surprising. This is a typical situation for a very large corporation. For example, IBM, Microsoft, Google, many companies, they invest in technologies. They have R&D labs, so this is typical. So R&D lab for NOKIA and currently is Bell Labs. All right. Another thing. So NOKIA is an old company of 150 years in business, and this is 2 years ago. The data, financial data, the money involved are quite big. So every year they invest lots of money. You divide this 120 by 2 decades by 20, you get what, 6 billion euros they invest for research and development. Located in 120 different countries. It's a huge company, gigantic one. So I cannot even tell you what's going on like in different departments. There are so many different business units, different departments, and I work only in one small subdivision and department of it that focuses on photonics. When it comes to job opportunities, NOKIA, just like many other companies, I don't want you to get an impression that it's like NOKIA is the only one that's like hiring. Of course, if you go to the careers section of any decent company, you will see lots of opportunities. Maybe they are not up to date, and maybe you won't get the insider information, but you will get an idea what jobs are available. If you need these particular links, let me know. I will send them out in later after the talk. But those are the links you can check, especially the last one for co-ops. This is for students who can do some kind of like internship or do some co-op work for NOKIA. And again, you check them out regularly because opportunities, they come and go, people come and go. This is a very fluid situation. All right. So I would say this is where I would close. We're talking about NOKIA, and I will give like 10 seconds for any questions if you have any before I move on to the next topic. Okay, I assume no questions. That is fine. We can. I hope I will leave enough time in the end, or we can go back to any slide and we can discuss. All right. So I work in the field of photonics, and I have been working in the past 5 years. And photonics is if you go to Wikipedia, you will see that photonics is defined quite broadly and I would say vaguely, and it's anything that you do with light and matter interaction. You can claim that you are doing photonics. So if you're working with lasers, fibers, waveguides, and whatnots, if you're doing applying the knowledge of optics, nonlinear optics, just straight regular optics, then most likely you're touching on photonics. And There is if you go to online and go to photonics.com, for example, you will see this is a hub for all sorts of all news photonics. And if you take a look at the sample of news, you can pick up a couple of terms that define what's going on in photonics business and technology. So you will be talking about such things as chips, some optical circuits. So that's actually important that I'll touch upon that a little bit later. We're talking about some kind of single photon emissions, miniaturization, resonators, all that stuff has to do with photonics. But example that I'll consider in the next couple of slides is when photonics is applied to telecom. Right? So what I will consider how light matter interactions, how these photonics elements are being used to send and receive valuable signals. So that will be like a case study what photonics does, and it kind of actually illustrates what is the focus of the photonics department that where I work in. And you can find such photonics departments nowadays in many other companies. It's pretty vibrant field nowadays. Many companies acquire smaller companies that do photonics, and many companies, large companies, especially telecom companies, they invest into photonics applications for telecom. So let's consider a specific example. Let's say you want to download the video from the internet, some kind of a useful signal you want to receive. And I will assume that you're using a computer, and somewhere in your house there is a modem that sends a signal connected to a router, but it's just some kind of device that gives you wireless signal that sends radio frequency waves to your computer in the range of a couple of gigahertz, right? Now the question is, well, where this signal is coming from? Well, most likely, if you try to watch a video, it's being stored somewhere originally in a data center somewhere far away from you, right? There are huge buildings filled with computers, racks, and equipment that takes the data from hard drives there and converts the data into some kind of optical signal and sends this signal over, well, I will consider a case when it sends the signal over optical fiber. So I would assume that you are using a modern internet provider. I won't call any names. And if you look at the optical fiber, you will see that what's coming out from the fiber is an optical signal. It is some kind of light from laser that's a little bit modified. And the frequency of your modem and router is a couple of gigahertz, but inside it's hundreds of thousands of gigahertz. It's much higher frequency. Okay, so what we see here, we have some kind of electronic equipment here. We have optical signal here, and then it arrives and is being converted into electrical signal inside your modem, and then it gets again converted from electrical signal to RF signal and goes all the way to computer. I won't discuss how computer converts it into image, but it's also a bunch of conversion from electrical to electrical signals. But we'll focus on this link only. All right. So the first step when the signal travels to you is you have to take the data, convert it. There are some electronic circuits in those racks, and what they do, though the circuits do, they convert electronic signal into optical domain, right? And the signal travels through optical fiber, reaches this electronic device, again converts from optical to electronic signal. Then from electronic, it has to be converted, not already useful information extracted, and it gets converted into radio frequency signal in this couple of gigahertz regime. All right, and in the end, you get some valuable signal on your screen. Now, what's interesting is that in all these conversions, either from electrical to optical, from optical to electrical, from electrical to radio frequency, we're talking about such processes as in telecom are called modulation, demodulation, which basically stand for conversion and deconversion of a signal from one domain into another. And another things, another component that is useful for or required to send the signal is the channels, right, for information. Those can be either wires, copper wires inside, for example, inside the modem, maybe inside the rack, and also fibers, if we're talking about fiber optical internet. signal propagates in fibers. Now, the magic of fibers, and that's where the photonics, the conventional photonics this is very well developed, an application of photonics for telecom, sending information in optical fibers. If you take a look at the optical fiber, it's an interesting and very advanced piece of technology, I would say, because even though if you hold it in your hands, it seems like a pretty thick wire, but the actual useful information is being sent in a very, very small core of glass that is on the size of it is comparable to the thickness of human hair, which is just amazing if you think about this for a second. All right, all those images and music and all that stuff is coming to you squeezed into light signal that is propagating like within the human hair thickness. And even more than that, it's not the fiber core that is about maybe like 100 tens of micrometers basically. Actually, the signal is in the very, very core, and the useful signal that comes to you from an internet provider is actually confined to even smaller size. It's about like 10 micrometers or so. Another interesting fact about these fibers, they are so good nowadays that you can send a signal and it will travel 10 kilometers even without losing, it will lose roughly half of its intensity. So 10 kilometers without losing too much power. It's just amazing what people do. But it's not. But it's nothing compared to what we are trying to achieve now as a technology, and moves forward with the application of photonics in replacing electrical components of these setups with optical ones. So we can push it even further, and we can start talking about photonic circuits. What that is that if I show you the device that goes into modern modem, remember modem is a device that converts signal from one domain into another roughly, and writes information into light or into radio frequency signal. So if you take a look at modern chip, it may look like a chip that you will find in like electronic chip, maybe a CPU if you open it up, but in fact, it will even it will look like a on the left side, what you see is a large wafer that's being the result of the process where these photonics optical circuits are being designed and photolithographically or e-beam lithographically produced. They cut into pieces, and let's say here you see a single piece. Inside there is some kind of circuitry designed with specific purpose, and on the right side here on this white piece of thing is where the fibers are coming in. You don't see the fibers. This is a glass block that usually holds a couple of fibers. So those fibers that I was showing here. So the cores, I'm talking about these cores that are a couple of tens of micrometers in diameter. So they're being somehow glued onto this chip, and you send light signal into the chip. Well, how would you do it? How would the light go into this small chip? Well, if you take a look at the microscope, be it optical microscope with high resolution or maybe electronic microscope, what you will see that inside these circuits, there are some kind of like wires. These wires, they are very, very thin. They are like half of micrometer. So it's it's 500 nanometers. So the light that you send into the circuits is actually squeezed even further. So we go from from human hair, roughly scale, into hundreds of nanometers. So half of a micron. So you squeeze light and you send light through these channels, through these wires. They're called waveguides because they guide light waves. And you can split light into one. Say for example, the light comes in, it splits here. It's called a Y junction splitter. It splits light in two equal intensities. One goes this way, the other goes this way. You can apply electric field in the vicinity of this waveguide. You can do lots of stuff. So you can change the phase of this light, and then you can recombine this light and all sorts of interesting effects can happen. For example, interference, and you may end up with no light coming out, or lots of or the same kind of the same amount of light coming out. So these are circuits that are actually being used to send signal and to modify this light signal in modern photonic circuits. So we're not talking about metal wires and sending RF signals along metal wires. We're talking about optical signal being sent through these finely designed tens of hundreds of nanometer thick wires, light wires, waveguides. So if you take a look, if you take a look at the cross section, if you take this chip and cut it, and you do a cross section and you take a look what's going on inside, you will see that it's pretty complicated chip. It has many layers, but it's based on silicon. So that's where the silicon photonics terminology comes in. And you will see that there are several layers inside. So this is side view of a photonics chip. And say this is as if I would cut it something like this, like vertically on this image. What you will see a cross section of a waveguide. Maybe you'll see some metallic wires. You will see some materials, semiconductor materials such as germanium that are used for photodiodes, because you need to convert light signal into electrical signal, right? And that's where photodiodes come in. Photodiodes absorb light and they create voltage. And there are other elements that you may find that are all parts of this photonics circuit. So again, this is like analogy of implementing electronic components, but in optical domain. So this with all the advantages of light, low power, no interference, and many other advantages. So, all right. So again, this is I said that it's pretty miraculous what we can do by squeezing light into optical fibers, right? You take a light optical useful signal and squeeze into human hair distance. It seems quite cool, but in these photonic circuits, you squeeze light even further. So this is on the left side is a cross section of a waveguide that you can see on the right. So the size of those waveguides, it's horizontal and vertical dimensions are about 500 nanometers by 200 nanometers. So pretty small, and you squeeze your signal even further. So you basically push your optical signal into these tiny waveguides, and you manipulate the properties of light by like phase, amplitude, and whatnot. So it depends on the application. So to me, it's if I think about this, it's close to magic, I would say, how modern technology achieves this. There are lots of challenges, of course, but nowadays you can find all sorts of devices that are successfully implemented. For example, you can send light from free space, from fiber. You can send light into these waveguides that are part of the photonic circuit. So on the top, again, this is the cross section that I just said, where you take a chip, you do cross section and side view. And on the bottom, a couple of optical microscope images of some of the photonic elements, photonic circuit elements. For example, germanium detector. All these yellow things are just metal wires made of copper. And here a small germanium detector. And here an example of a modulator. Again, you see some these wires, some metal contacts that are there to produce some electric fields that would modify the property of light. And if you take a close look, maybe you cannot see it very well, but you see these wires split here and recombine here. So again, this is in sort of similar to this configuration. So this is an example of a simple photonic circuit that is used to modulate the properties of light. And there are many different elements like this in a large photonic circuit, depending on the application. Right. So this is what I'm doing in my day-to-day job. I'm designing or at least help design these photonic circuits, studies their properties, try to understand what is working and what is not working, and so on and so forth. And the main challenge, so the whole field is pretty mature by now, but there are lots of challenges. Those challenges, the main ones are on the slide. And I would say the most important ones are currently is to achieve higher data rates. and to integrate the laser on a chip, because all I showed before examples of a photonic circuits that expect light to come in from somewhere, right? You can also generate light on a chip. That's the ultimate goal of modern silicon photonics. It's yet to be successfully achieved, I would say. All right, so I hope I'm, how am I doing? 26 minutes, okay, cool. So this is all I wanted to say about NOKIA and photonics. And if you didn't understand something in terms of like science, this is totally fine, because this is not the main goal. I just wanted to provide you the context of what I've been doing, what experience I have, and the main thing will come just in the next couple of slides. All right. So how I ended up there? Well, at some point I had to make a decision where I wanted to be. So I was looking for a job, and I was in academia. I was in academia for a long time, almost like 15 years. And for me, the transition process was very painful. I was trying to understand where I take my career in the future. It seems like it's really easy to decide where you go, whether you go in the industry or academia, especially if you're staying in academia for a long time. You kind of know academia very well, right? You know what's required of you. You know what professors do. You know what researchers do. But what do people in industry do? Well, we don't know. But some people may think of the industry as some kind of a corporate spirit, very boring. In academia, lots of freedom. You just do research and publish, maybe teach, and it's not black and white. It's not like that. There are many more nuances both in industry and academia, and that's what I would encourage every student to realize, that you maybe you don't know very well even academia. So I encourage you to explore it, take a critical look at where you are, what lies ahead, talk to people, talk to your advisors, talk to young faculties and stuff like that, and talk to people like me and build a picture. So it's not black and white. So, and to illustrate even further, I would use what I call Einstein method, Einstein-based method. You know that whenever you want to convince a physicist in your argument, you just give Einstein as an example, right? So let's take a look at the Albert Einstein career. So he, in my view, he represents the ultimate physicist. As if you read his biography, you will see that his education was in physics teaching. He got his diploma in 1900, and for 2 years he was unable to find a job. Right, his first job was in Swiss patent office, as many of you, some of you might know, but he got this job in 1902. So for 2 years he was trying to find a job and was unsuccessful, and it was very daunting for him. It was he was lucky. He was very happy that he found a 9-to-5 job in what you might call an industry. I would say it's not exactly an industry, but it was some kind of non-academic environment for sure. And he stayed there for 7 years, right? And we think of Einstein as this freedom-loving person, very creative, who rejects all rigidity and schedule. Maybe well, it's not like that. So, and the reason. And the fact that he stayed for 7 years in this position tells you something about, well, there was a compromise to be made, and he made a compromise, he made this decision, and for 7 years he managed to stay happy and productive. So something was, there was a reason for him to do that. And after that, he published a couple of papers, not a couple, many actually, many papers. Some of them were very, very, very influential. And after that, he transitioned to academia, and we know his success story from then. It's interesting to ask what happened in 1902, right? Why 1902? Well, maybe it's just an accident, but I like to think about another fact. In 1902 was his first child was born. And when you have someone that you are really responsible for, your priorities change and you start thinking differently and you make decisions differently. Well, and well, that's Einstein. So if Einstein went through this, you're also okay to go through this. It's not irreversible decision, right? To go outside of academia. And in fact, if I take a look at the sample of my colleagues, my former students, now they are all working somewhere, I would say I was surprised that like a small number of them actually stayed in academia. Some of them did, but most of them left. And nowadays, if you take a look at the job opportunities, a lot of those opportunities come from IT industry, and that's what is reflected in the sample that I have. Well, I ended up not in the IT industry, but I ended up in somewhere like an applied physics engineer, which is also fine. So let me show you my career path. And that will explain why I have the expertise to comment and what kind of experience I have. So I joined academia in 2001. Now that I think about this, like 20 years ago, I'm not that old, but yeah, maybe I am. When I was preparing the slides, it was interesting to realize. And my first degree was Master of Science in Theoretical Physics. Then I had to switch in 2007. I had to switch. I got another master's. Now I switched into experimental science. I got my PhD in 2014 in experimental science. I was doing photonics, spectroscopy. And 2014, I graduated with PhD. And I always, always thought myself like in the background somewhere, oh yeah, maybe I'll become a professor. But I never critically analyzed neither my academic path, possible academic path, and never critically analyzed my any other alternatives actually, until I became a postdoc. I became a postdoc in City College of New York, and I was doing some also new field for me. I was doing new studies, but at that time. I started looking around. I started talking to young faculties, especially those who are on tenure track. I started like talking to all the faculties as well, asking about their opinion, how's the situation in academia now. I had some concerns, and so my transition was. Gradually I realized that I have to leave. I have to leave because 2016 was the year where my son was born. So again, my priorities changed, and I had to decide what do I do. But I wanted to make my decision again well-informed, carefully weighted, and optimal in my in my situation. So in 2016, I joined startup company, and I've been working in this in that field since 2016 for 5 years now. And I have no regrets, almost, maybe some, but I'm pretty happy with what I did. So I realized that my impression or at least my knowledge of academia was not complete, and my understanding of industry was totally lacking. So so that's what happened to me. And originally I joined a startup company that was part of like a larger company that is now off the market. They've been purchased. So it was part of the Korean technology. It was some kind of like a department within a big company. Then in 2 years later, it became an independent company that made quite a big splash in silicon photonics industry. But in 2020, the company that I was working for, Elenion Technologies, excuse me, it has been purchased by a large company, by NOKIA. And so, and since then I've been working in NOKIA. So I changed 3 different companies even without leaving my office. But the point is, I've been working in the same like field as an applied physicist and engineer for 5 years. And what I observed is that you see companies come and go, right? Companies buying companies, people come and go. It's pretty fluid situation. And if time allows, I would like to tell you a little story about how I got this job. It's pretty I would say instructive too. All right. So now, if I were to talk to myself 5 years, like return back 5 years, and I meet myself, and what I will tell myself 5 years ago, maybe not even 5, but many years ago. So, should you go to industry? Well, it's not for everyone, absolutely. Why would you not go there? I mean, if you want to avoid stress, if you want very quiet, if you don't like occasional stress, it's not always, but stress can be really high. So yeah, if you don't like that, maybe you shouldn't go there. There is a risk that you can be trapped in a cycle of very boring work. What I mean, you can be working on some device for many years. Like you do it with device better every year, doing more or less the same. It can be boring. it's if your goal and your dream is to do research, exploration, it's not that easy. It's possible, but to do that, you need to find some kind of a company that allows research and development. Smaller companies, startups, especially ones, startups, they don't have enough budget for that. Or if you want, if you see yourself as a teacher, for example, and you want to teach and to reach people, also you should avoid the industry. Other than that, I don't think there are any other serious reasons. Why would you choose industry? Well, a specific example. As a postdoc, I was getting paid in 2016 like 45, maybe a little bit more. It depends on grant money, but it's 45. It was 45, and that was a very big disappointment for me at that time. I had the same set of skills one year later, and after I joined startup, I was offered like more than $100,000 just to begin with. So I felt like my skills were appreciated better elsewhere. So yeah, especially at the start. I mean, if you want to become successful faculty and a researcher and then group leader and stuff like that, or you can end up getting paid much more than 100K nowadays, even in academia. But the path is pretty long. So by the time you're maybe 45 or so, you'll be paid much better. But when you begin, is much smaller number. What also in industry, as I said, companies come and go, people come and go. It's surprisingly good job mobility. And once you establish yourself as a professional, once you establish yourself as a reliable person, people will contact you, offering jobs too, and you're never locked in. So you can leave. If you don't like place, you just leave. And usually, if you leave, you get more pay because you negotiate money. And you can find actually places like IBM, for example, right? IBM big company, they have research and development. In fact, my former boss when I was a postdoc, she worked for IBM for a long time in research and development department, and then she joined academia when she came back. And also what's good about industry, what I like is that opportunities increase. When you become more experienced, you meet more people, you get more confident, you get more, your resume grows, and your opportunities usually grow. And what I found is also appealing in industry is I see less drama and less well, it's a fine point, and maybe I'll go into details if you ask me to, but I'll just do one comment. I found it when at the time when I was transitioning from academia to industry, when I was talking to those young faculties, I was asking their opinions. I was conducting my own research, right, trying to understand what's the climate in academia. Well, at the same time, Nature was doing its own research and they did a study on what's going on in current academia. So and only much later I learned that we came to basically the same conclusions. And I'll give you two examples. I was talking to young faculties, and one thing that I heard that was really disturbing to me is that I heard young faculty telling me, you know what, I would leave, but I realized that I couldn't do anything else. Or I would leave if I were you, but I'm not as young as you, so I'm kind of locked in. And hearing this was a little bit disturbing. I hope not everyone is like that, and I hope the situation improves. But this is something that I realized is not too uncommon, and that was a little bit disturbing to me. So, as for example, if you see yourself as a researcher and you want to do some kind of a investigative work, then you have to realize nowadays you'll be lucky if you'll be doing if you'll be spending 40% of your time doing research. Well, study shows that in modern day scientists they spend less than 30%. Oh, so around 30% of their time. 70% of your time you'll be doing something else. So I wanted to do research, and I realized that I couldn't do research, or at least I saw cases of research being done in a way that compromises scientific integrity, and I didn't want to do that. I saw people talk about each other in a way that I didn't like they talk. So there was a little bit of drama, and of course my experience is singular. There are many different places, there are many different groups, but what I encourage you is to realize that your situation is also singular. So before you make a decision, go and ask around, just like I did. Make a library of case studies for yourself. All right. So let's say I convinced you, and you think that you want to give industry a try. What should you do? Well, I would say after I interviewed several tens of people by now, because the company is growing, you meet, we need new people. So people come and you just judge them. Many of them come from academia. And I would say what is very, very important factor that will be helpful throughout your life as you advance is make sure that your fundamentals are very solid. It's very easy to become an expert, quote to quote, where when you don't know much outside of your expertise. You can end up locking yourself into some kind of very narrow track, and it will be really hard to switch. So build and maintain strong fundamentals. Make sure that all the courses that you're taking in college and in grad school, they are to the best of your abilities. I'm talking about classical mechanics, I'm talking about electrodynamics, I'm talking about quantum mechanics. Those things that are like, they must be like rock solid. It will pay off so many times in your career. Yeah, you have to be ready to learn, because the more you learn, especially and in the industry, actually, this learning and getting new skills is very encouraged. Often you can get even take courses, and the company will pay for you for the certificates. So there are so many opportunities. So you have to have this habit of learning, and yeah, be on the lookout, be ready for opportunities, and be open for opportunities. Don't be afraid to switch, because if something looks better, just go there. It's your job is not your career, right? But remember that you will almost never get something that's like perfect, right? It'll be always a compromise, always a trade-off, and take it one step at a time. All right, be ready to compromise, but never compromise your core interests. And by core interests, I mean something that's really, really important for you. So apart from this specific example advices, I would say I have a couple of meta principles that I try to follow myself, and I encourage everyone else to follow. Is that you ask yourself before you make any decision as you go. So who are you? Who am I? So maybe you say, okay, I'm a teacher, right? I like to teach. Well, then industry is most likely not for you. Or okay, I'm a researcher. I see myself only as researcher. Then maybe industry is not for you unless you end up in R&D. Or you say, okay, I'm a father, right? Then you say, okay, then we're talking about some other responsibilities, some other priorities. Then another thing that you have to keep in mind, don't compromise your core principles, core values. So try to make decisions career-wise or anything else that are respect those things that make you constantly happy. You can end up in a career, in a job that makes you unhappy, and that's no one will be unhappy if you're unhappy. No one will be happy if you're unhappy, right? So you have to keep that in mind. And also, well, stay in where you are if you enjoy it, but constantly check: are you getting more than you're putting in? All right. If you think that you're getting more from your position, it means that you're growing, right? You're enriching yourself. At some point, if it feels like, oh, your job, your position is taking more than actually you then it gives back, maybe it's time to switch. But in general, I would like to quote American economist Thomas Sowell. They say, to make life more harmonious, you have to be appreciated, right? And to do that, you need to equip yourself with skills that people are willing to pay for. And my example, when I was being paid 45 for postdoc and doing basically bringing the same set of skills for the table to a different place, so you appreciate it more, right? So to this, to Thomas Sowell principle, you equip yourself with skills. I would add also find a place where your skills are appreciated, right? When this happens, you will be happier. All right. So I will summarize my talk in this slide, and keep these things in mind. Those are the main messages I would like to convey. situation is changing. And I think these kind of talks that I'm giving are important because the situation in the industry is changing and academia is changing. So it's important to take a temperature reading every maybe year before as you get closer to the graduation. I will emphasize again. It's hard to overemphasize. Constantly improve your fundamentals. Make sure that your education that you get, at least fundamentally, is correct. And it's solid. It's very important because it will give you so much flexibility. It's so easy that will be easier to switch careers if you need to. Again, there won't be perfect solutions on your path. Be ready to compromise, but your core values must be intact. Things that give you happiness, don't give up on them. And if you're looking for a company, I would suggest you try to find companies that have very strict selection process. The reason I'm saying this is because when you end up with in a company and working in a team, it means that automatically all your colleagues, all your coworkers are high grade, and working with people of high level of preparation, good work ethics is very important. The team is super important, regardless where you are. Well, so if you go to these companies, you automatically get good colleagues, good friends for free, right? And once you are in, and once you are surrounded by these good people, I would suggest invest into relationship. Be a good friend, be a good colleague, and your network will grow. People will remember you, they will appreciate you, and that will help you in future job search if you decide to. All right. So I will stop right here. We have about like maybe 13 minutes. We can go over time if you wish. If you want, I will tell you a story, but I will stop here and I will I'll accept questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I've heard that once you get a PhD, that sometimes people in a hiring search, they'll sometimes say that you're overqualified when you have a PhD. Have you ever experienced that yourself, and how do you navigate that or prevent that from being a problem?
I would say it's this is something I also heard, and it's what I heard again a rumor that if you have a PhD, you have a different minimum expectation for your salary, right? But my experience is that I was in a company that prided itself in having many PhDs. I think almost all my colleagues have PhDs. It depends on where you go. Some companies don't need PhDs, and some jobs don't need PhDs. Again, you have to take your skills where they will be appreciated. It makes no sense if you're really qualified to go somewhere where you're overqualified. You'll be getting paid less for the same skills. It's better to find a place which needs PhDs, and there are many places that need PhDs, and there'll be even more. I think once the technology gets more adopted, there will be more demand for PhDs. But I haven't encountered this practice in my life, but I heard it too. Yeah.
All right, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Jacob, you can go ahead with your question.
Okay, thank you for the talk. My question is, so in an environment where you have a bunch of PhD physicists, did you ever notice where you had some people looking down on others if you hadn't yet proved yourself with the company or anything like that?
Oh, never like that. Never. Again, I'm one of the happiest moments in my career after I joined this little startup is the quality of my colleagues. That's why I mentioned the companies with strict selection process. It means when they select people not only on their qualification as specialists, but they select and they look a lot at what kind of person you are, right? At your attitude, the way you behave, the way you answer questions that are tricky, the way you treat your questions that are not clear. So there are so many levels to selection process. So when all colleagues that I have, even though they're all PhDs, I feel like it doesn't really matter to them. What matters is that can I rely on you? Can I rely on your expertise? Are you helpful? Can you can rely on you in case something is not okay with me. Say I'm sick, or I'm tired, or I'm not trying. I cannot. So I don't have enough time to work on my project. Can I count on your help? Yes, absolutely. So that's why I emphasize that looking for companies that select right people is important, because if you end up there, you automatically get good colleagues for free. But I never experienced nothing like that. No.
Okay, thank you. And if you end up having time, I'm all for hearing a story. So.
Okay.
Taylor?
Hey, thank you for your talk. I was wondering, I know this is something I have been struggling with as I'm starting to search for jobs, and I have interests that go all over the board. I like medical, electronics, and power, and I'm personally having a hard time on picking which interest to pursue a career in. And so I was curious if you had any advice or any similar experience on what I should pick, or how anyone should pick their career, or where to start.
This is maybe the hardest question of locking yourself onto some kind of more specific goal, because if you're all over the place, if everything is interests you, it's really hard, because you have only that much time, you have only that much effort, only that much energy. So if you are still early on your path, I would suggest you sit down with yourself and unlock on something. Again, make a priority list. Write down what makes you happy, right? What are your core values? Who you are, and choose maybe the top two lines, and think hard which line is the more important one. All right. It's a dangerous situation when you have too many interests. It's okay to have too many interests if you explore, but once decision time comes, you have to take a hard look at who you are and what makes you happy.
Thank you. That is actually really helpful and awesome advice. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Connor?
Hi, well, thank you for the talk. I thought it was really good, and I thought you gave really good advice. I actually have a question about the photonics. You mentioned earlier in your talk that you wanted to incorporate lasers onto the chips in the future. I wonder if you could elaborate a little more on that, because I found that kind of interesting.
I mean, if you ever saw a laser in a lab, it's usually a big box, right, that shines light out, and the laser is used to carry useful signal. And right now, lasers are usually somewhere outside of these chips. What you want to have, you want to have everything in a single chip. All you want to apply voltage on some kind of pads on the chip, and you want light to be generated on the chip. And the way you do it, you take a laser, a solid state laser, and you squeeze it into smaller size, the smallest size you can, and then you somehow glue it on top of your chip. It's a very complicated task, and I think I will just say that much. It's yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse?
Yeah, thank you so much again for the talk. So yeah, like you said about, talking to former colleagues and classmates and, building up your own case studies on questions and interests that you had, I've definitely been doing the same. So one thing that pushes me more towards industry than academia is stress. And so personally, I actually get much more stressed out in school than I personally have been in my internships. And the vast majority of my alum that I talked to and other people, they say it gets better when they get out as well. But I saw in your talk that for you put industry is more stressful than academia. And do you think that goes along with more specifically your job, you personally, or like are your coworkers like that as well? Or I don't know. I'm sorry, I just wanted to compare that.
Yeah, I would say that there is distinction between young professional and unexperienced professional and experienced professional. It goes like this: unexperienced professional, this is your first couple of years, doesn't know how to work, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where all the stress comes in. Experienced professional knows how not to work. And that's where it gets easier. Once you get more expertise, once you get, you understand, your skills grow, you spend less time on the same set of tasks, you know where to cut corners. It gets much easier, at least in my case. I feel like I even have time for doing stuff that I love, even more so than when I was in my postdocs years is hard to compare because I spent only 1.5 years. Now, the first 2 years on my job here were tough, really tough. Yeah, it was stressful. It was very stressful. But now, after 2 years, I feel like it's much better. Especially if you go to larger company, it's much easier. For small startup companies, if you're young and you don't have responsibilities like children, I would advise you to challenge yourself. Go to startup. You'll get paid more. You have more faster growth, but then try to end up in some kind of larger company. Then you can relax and say, okay, now I know how not to work, right? I know where to cut corners. I know how to save time, and I will be now enjoying myself a little bit more.
Thank you so much for that feedback.
Caleb?
Yes, thank you for the talk. I really enjoyed it. I guess my question was that as a person who you've been in the academia and you've been in the industry, do you feel like having that comparison helped you feel like you were more, like, I don't know, accepted or useful on the industry versus academia?
Not particular. What I notice is that when people stay in academia for a long time, let's say you become a postdoc, right? So you graduate and you spend the next 5 years doing one postdoc after another, and then you try to transition to academia. That will be tough. Something happens in the mindset, something happens in your habits, something happens in your circuits in the brain. You start thinking differently. It's hard to you see. I spent only 1.5 years. I didn't have time to really transform into full academician. So for me, it wasn't beneficial, but it wasn't detrimental in any way as regards to my job and performance and my evaluation by my colleagues. I kept asking myself why I was hired, because when I was looking at my colleagues, I realized that they all professionals in their fields, in the fields of photonics. I was not. I was a physicist. And I joined as a silicon photonics engineer, and I never became one. Every time I decided, okay, now I would like to study with this kind of craft, something happens that required the skill of a physicist, and I was moved to this project. And it has been happening for 5 years. So I realized, okay, maybe I'm pretty good physicist in this regard, and my skills are valuable on this. So I'll just be doing exactly this, and it makes me happy. So it means that I don't need to do what those people were doing, and I'm just, what I learned from my academic years, yeah, it's helpful, but it wasn't a decisive factor.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Lauren?
Hi, my question was, you addressed a little bit about sort of on-the-job training, how you're never gonna be like fully prepared for a job. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that, because like one of my main concerns is like every time I see, some sort of like a job description, or I'm kind of looking towards thinking about like what I kind of want to do, I think, well, I don't know anything specific or like a ton about this, like, specific job or the specific description. So I was just wondering if you could kind of address like, kind of what sort of how much you really need to know about like a specific job or a specific industry, and like the quality of on-the-job training is in your experience.
Yeah, so it's possible. It's possible to prepare yourself for a specific career and specific job position. It's possible. Say if you want, you can be doing silicon photonics PhD, and you can end up in silicon photonics company. You can be doing some kind of laser studies PhD, and you end up in a laser company. It's possible to do. But still, there is an unavoidable gap between research and industry, simply because research is pushing frontier forward, right? And industry is applying something in a reproducible mass scale fashion. So there's always a disconnect, at least in terms of technologies. Some technologies are frontline, some technologies are just mature technologies. I'm talking about industry. So there will be always a change. There will be a disconnect. But more importantly, there are no university is not supposed to prepare you for a particular job. No, all you have to do is to come out with what I would say really good fundamentals. There is some expertise. When you write a thesis, you become an expert in a particular field, but it shouldn't define you in any way. What should define you is what you can do in terms of your versatility. And this is where your fundamentals come in. If you're a physicist, you're supposed to know quantum mechanics well, right? You're supposed to know mechanics well. You're supposed to know electrodynamics well. And that would allow you to come to a job and say, okay, you know what? Yeah, most likely none of the job is already tailored for me. But I can pick up this stuff within a month. And for that, I don't need my expertise. I need my fundamentals. So we focus on that. And that will help you regardless where you will end up.
Okay, we have 4 more questions from the students.
Yeah.
But before that, I have a question of myself. Thank you, Yury, for a very informative talk, and I'm pretty sure it will help the students. And for their benefit, can you tell them a little bit about the different layers of an interview process from the time they've submitted their CV to signing the dotted line? Just so that they know what to expect, and also talk a little bit about maybe from your experience or from people you have spoken to in the industry, the success rate from the number of jobs applied to the number of offers given to them.
Yeah, sure. My experience is singular in a sense, not only in that it just pertains to me, but also in a sense that just one second. Can you still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is the company that I joined was a startup company that with very strict policy for hiring, very strict. I remember my interview process was like 5 different levels, and the last level was almost 6 hours of real time on the whiteboard questions. So it was really demanding. Now, in the retrospect, I understand why it happened, and I understand it's a rare case. Not every company does that. Some companies are so try to avoid risk that they hire what they think is rock solid candidates. So I think it's good to challenge yourself like that, because what you will end up having if you got accepted, you will know that all colleagues around you, they went through the same process. They all been vetted, and you can enjoy a company of really, really good people and high professionals. So whether this is not a norm for everywhere. Some companies are more go a little bit easier. It's hard to generalize, and I don't want to give an impression that the process I went through is typical, or this is something you should expect. So if I switched a couple of companies, then I would say, yeah, I can give you some kind of an advice based on several job interviews. I had maybe like 2 job interviews, but a real one that landed me this job been pretty tough. I don't want you to think that this is always like that. So it's the best I can do is to ask other people who ended up in different places, build your library view of cases. Don't use mine as the only one. It's because it's a little bit singular. What was the second question?
Well, just so that the students have a realistic expectation going into the job market, like how many applications versus how many offers made, or how many interview calls received, that kind of
yeah.
If you know any statistics based on your experience or anybody you know, or
Okay.
you've spoken to many people in the industry.
All right. So let me answer it this way. I will kill 2 birds with one stone. I will tell you a story, right? And this is the story of actually how I got this job. Not it was a little bit pre-context, additional what happened before that, roughly. So when I was thinking about whether I should go to industry or whether I should stay in academia, I was constantly chatting with a good colleague of mine from City College of New York, and a very a good person, Alexander Panuz. So he suggested, he was looking at me at my state of despair, if you wish. He told me, you know what, you should try like oil industry, because those companies, they are looking for PhDs, and especially they are looking for young PhDs. And surprisingly, for example, like Shell or Exxon or some other ones, they don't want you if you got your PhD more than 5 years ago. They would expect fresh people. And that's, I also mentioned, right? As long as you stay in academia, the less attractive you become for industry. I can say that it's fair to stay to a certain degree, all right? So he encouraged me to do that, and that's what I did. I applied for a position in Shell, and one of the first steps in the application was to fill out some kind of psychological test. And this is where I failed. The very first step, I did some psychological test, and they said, sorry, you don't fit, try again later. And that was very strange. It's like as if I was some kind of a deviant, some kind of psycho, but I wasn't. So my first try, I got rejected. All right, so I'm still a postdoc. I'm still looking for positions. I'm sending my resume in different places in academia, getting responses. You're on a short list and stuff like that. I ended up not getting any position in academia, apparently. Also, I was ready to go anywhere, actually. I was talking to my friends in IT, and I got some, not interview, but before interview, I received some kind of tasks, to complete, some kind of problem set to do for financial industry. So I gave my a try there, and I failed there. I got rejected as well. So rejection is a part of the process, of course, and it's hard to estimate for me to give you some kind of a number. What's the success rate? Success rate will be 100%. I can guarantee you, as long as you stay on your goal. So don't get discouraged. Don't pay attention to all those rejections. Don't even count them. Your success rate will be 100%. Right? You just set your goal and you go there, and you will end up getting what you want. Especially if you try to match your skills with the position, and that's, I think, what helped me. Okay, so I failed test for oil industry. I failed for financial industry. I didn't get academia, but I was looking on Indeed.com. I was looking for different positions, and one day I see a job description, and they say, okay, we need strong level of preparation in electrodynamics, optics, mathematics, analytical skills, some programming. And I look at my skills, like honestly looking at my skills, not something that I wish I had, but I honestly look at my skills and I say, checkbox, 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 checkbox. Okay, so it feels like I can take my skills and offer them, because I had nothing to offer for Shell. At least I didn't know what they wanted. I wasn't an exact match for financial industry, to be fair, right? Academia, arguably, maybe. I published my number of papers. I attended my number of conferences. I got my number of grants. In academia, I was pretty good, I would say. But whenever I took my skills and offered them where they were not needed, I got a rejection, right? So, but once I found a description that kind of matched what I wanted to do and what I could do, sometimes later, I got a reply from that company that we have an opening. Would you consider interviewing for us? It happened maybe a couple of months later, actually. I already forgot about that application. But this is the only application that almost, it matched, my skills matched the desired set of skills in a job description. And that worked for me the best. And after that, there was a phone interview. Then there was some problem sets that were given for me to work on the weekends. Then there was a presentation in a company for a small group. Then there was presentation in a company for a larger group. And then there was last step of solving problems in real time for different in front of the whiteboard. But that's my story of that consists mostly of failures, right? But success rate in my case, I consider 100%, simply because I disregard those failures. It's just part of the process.
Well,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can finish what you were saying, Yury.
Yeah. I think I'm done. Yeah. So that's the story that I wanted to share.
Well, yeah, very wisely said. You will have your share of failures, I guess, but eventually you will succeed. Okay,
Yeah.
Ryan.
Hey, thank you for the talk. I wanted to ask if you had any experience in burnout, either in in academia or in industry, and how you might mitigate early career burnout.
I think I had a burnout in academia, especially during my postdoc years. Every time you switch field, because I've been switching fields several times in my life. I went from studying gravity into doing experimental work in spectroscopy. Then I went from spectroscopy into doing some electronic transport topological materials. So the first year was really hard. And there was a March meeting was coming up, and I had to do some results in the new field. You had to read lots of papers to get up to speed in the new field. It was very, very stressful. Add on top of that, every time you get a paycheck, you look and say, okay, I've been studying all this stuff. I'm pretty good. I've been studying physics for so many years, and this is what I'm worth. So those paychecks were like reminders of what actually how my efforts are appreciated. So all of this was like piling up on me. So that was stressful. And how to deal with that? The best way is to see it ahead of time and not to step into this. But once you're in, sometimes you have to get through. That's how to get through. In industry, the first couple of years, the first 2 years were very tough, but they were mostly because again you're learning on the job, you're adjusting to the pace, and I also my goal was to get as much involved in many projects on the new job as possible, to get to get a better feeling of what was going on as fast as I could. And I have a bad habit of sometimes of biting more than I can chew, and that also led to a little bit like on overload, maybe burnout. But again, if you try to look ahead, that's the best way to avoid this kind of traps. But once you're in, what else can you do? If you have to do something, you have to do something. You have to get things done. But just look ahead. It's better to prepare yourself and not to step into the situation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Leah?
Thank you for the talk. I know you said industry was the right choice for you, but is there anything in particular that you missed from your time in academia?
Yes, research. Yeah, I miss research. I miss solving problems and that are time-consuming, that require thorough investigation. In industry, you have to deliver the product that works reliably and is cheap, and that gives you a whole different set of constraints. And we're operating with these constraints is different from just when you do research. So this is what I miss. I miss teaching, but I found a solution. For the past several years, I teach during summers. I spend some part of my time off, my vacations. I teach for summer schools, for high school students, and for Columbia University. I used to teach for Johns Hopkins. So I found my way out of that. But I do miss like a good research, and I do miss teaching opportunities. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Forrest?
Hello. Thank you for the talk. So I've recently been looking for a job somewhere in industry, and what I've found most of the time is a lot of the jobs I'm finding will either require me to move somewhere and keep moving throughout my career or something like that. And for me personally, I prefer to move to one area or stay in the same area for the entirety of my career. And I was wondering if you knew how realistic that is to stay in one area but still have job mobility.
It's I think it's more like more luxury than a given that you will be working remotely, especially if you want to remain a physicist. and especially if you want to remain a physicist with hands-on experience, because you need to be in a lab. I still go to the lab, and so I cannot move. Even though I have a choice, I could work remotely if I switch completely to some kind of simulations, but it's hard. I think it's more a luxury. Maybe you should consider some IT jobs. You have to be like a simulation guy. You have to be like a theoretical physicist more, if you don't want to travel. But if you end up in industry and you will be doing with customers or with hardware, there is no way around it. You'll have to be traveling. You'll have to move to close to the job. Yeah. If you're young and you don't have children, maybe it won't hurt to give a try moving somewhere. Once you get in, once you give yourself like 2-3 years, you will look around and you will see. Once you're inside, you'll see it a little bit better. You will see more opportunities. You'll get a better understanding where you can end up, where you can work with minimal presence in the office. So it's hard to make a proper judgment when you're looking from the outside. Once you're inside, it will be easier. But you have to go inside. Yeah.
Thank you.
Last question for the day, Greg.
Hey, thank you for your talk. It was really interesting. I had a question, and it was, as you were transitioning into industry from academia, did you ever feel like your lack of industry experience prevented you from getting the job that you might have wanted and could have gotten if you had gone straight into industry after getting your bachelor's?
No, and I've been thinking about this a lot. What was the decisive factor that me, without industry experience in that particular field, and also without a specific preparation for that field, what got me the job? And I think my answer is is here. When you interview someone for a position, if someone has good fundamentals, you understand, you know that this guy can do the job well, or he can or guy or girl can pick it up on the job. It's much worse than when you hire a professional that is so expert in such a narrow field that he cannot do anything else. Then you need to have a position that specifically matches this expert. Sometimes some positions require exactly such experts, some positions, but not all. And I would argue that the majority don't require experts. What is required is a decent matching of your skills to the what job requires, and being a well-prepared physicist with very strong fundamentals. And even looking at the old peoples we interviewed, this is what I always judge in people. And this is what I always find in those who we hire. I understand that apart from them being experts in their field, and what they write, you'll write a thesis, you'll become an expert in one field. But all of them have strong fundamentals. And whenever there is an expert that doesn't have strong fundamentals, it also happens once in a while. Those people don't get hired. So this is a lack of industry experience is all right. Especially when people hire like new PhD graduates, they understand. No one expects you to have industry experience. They hire you for not for the experience mostly, but for your skills, including your human skills, your communication skills, but mostly for your skills that you put on the table, and that comes from your education. Yeah.
Okay, I guess that was the last question. Yury, if you can please send me maybe by email the links that you showed at the very beginning of your
Sure.
talk.
Yeah.
I will forward it to the student email list, and hopefully we will have some students from Appalachian who apply to those positions.
Okay, yeah, sure. I will do it straight after we're done.
Thank you. Your talk has created a lot of interest among the students, and that's good to always see. Thank you again for your talk, and have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for your time, guys.
Have a good one.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.